Caitlin Clark sends a clear message to one Stephanie White. Stephanie, it's about time you decided to stick up for your players. I was getting tired of getting scratched, clawed, and grabbed all game long, every game. It's about time you decided to say something to the referees. Stephanie White, a few minutes prior to that, ignoring Caitlin Clark's double-double.
For a moment, Indiana Fever fans probably checked the calendar to make sure they hadn't accidentally traveled to an alternate universe. Stephanie White got a technical foul. Caitlin Clark looked thrilled about it, and suddenly the internet started connecting dots like detectives who had just discovered a secret basketball conspiracy. Was this a coach finally defending her superstar, or was Clark music, quietly sending a message that had been building for months? The answer is far more interesting than you think.
Indiana Fever took down the Chicago. Ladies and gentlemen, the Indiana Fever took down the Chicago Sky 114-106. Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, they both finished with a 30-point plus double-double tonight. But if you only looked at the box score, you think this was a perfect picture of a dominant duo with flashes of Myisha Hines-Allen, which I see a lot of people praising. And to each his own, I'm not going to tell people who to praise and who not to praise. I'm personally not going to praise Myisha Hines-Allen in general because of when I looked at the film, what came up to me, right? And she's not the only one. Let's dive straight in.
The strangest part of the Indiana Fever's latest win was not the final score, the comeback, or even the technical fouls that suddenly changed the energy inside the building. The strangest part was watching a situation that had been quietly building for months finally become impossible to ignore.
It's getting really weird now. It's weird, it's strange, it's stupid. The fact that Stephanie White refuses to credit Caitlin Clark, especially in front of the team, like she already didn't want to give her no credit for the game winner versus the Washington Mystics when she bailed her out. Now Caitlin Clark bailed you out again, you and Kelsey Mitchell, but for whatever reason, you want to keep trying to credit Kelsey Mitchell at the podium. It's weird. It's odd. It makes no sense. And once again,
for most of the season, every conversation surrounding the Fever has centered on opponents, referees, physical defense, and Caitlin Clark's ability to survive what often music looks less like a basketball game and more like an obstacle course disguised as professional sports.
She's talking about how the rookies are having a hard time processing the massive heat that is put on this franchise. And I've said, this is probably the only WNBA franchise that could relate to, say, an NFL team in the kind of social media scrutiny, and I even mean certain NFL.
Yet underneath all of that noise, another story has been unfolding. It is a story about a superstar point guard, music, and a head coach who increasingly appear to see the game through completely different lenses.
So the first thing, Stephanie White was asked about Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. They were the first teammates to have 30-point double-doubles in the same exact game. Stephanie White says thoroughly throws a few compliments, but quickly brings up Kelsey Mitchell.
Aaliyah and Caitlin are the first teammates in W history to have a 30-point double-double in the same game. Can you quantify what we're seeing and how special it is to have two players of that caliber in their primes playing for your team?
You can build a team around that. And certainly then you add in Kelsey, who had already been here.
When Indiana took the floor once again, the pattern looked familiar. Clark was creating offense, drawing attention from multiple defenders, moving the ball, pushing the pace, and carrying the responsibility that naturally comes with being the face of the franchise. At the same time, the physical treatment she has received throughout the season continued music to generate frustration. Fever fans have spent months watching Clark get bumped, grabbed, held, and knocked off her spots while waiting for whistles that often seem to arrive late or not arrive at all. What made this particular night different was not that the officiating suddenly improved, it was that Stephanie White finally decided she had seen enough. For weeks, one of the biggest criticisms directed toward the Fever coaching staff was the perception that White was too passive when it came to defending her players publicly and confronting officials during games. Coaches across basketball have long understood that part of the job extends beyond drawing up plays and calling timeouts. Sometimes a coach must send a message. Sometimes the message is directed toward the referees. Sometimes it is directed toward the opposing team. Sometimes it is directed toward the players sitting on the bench watching everything unfold. The technical foul White received may have lasted only a few seconds on the scoreboard, but its significance stretched much further than that. After the game, Clark's comments immediately caught people's attention. On the surface, they sounded lighthearted.
So the Indiana Fever have a Kelsey Mitchell problem, and it's not really in the way that you would think, because Kelsey Mitchell hasn't been terrible this year. She has not been terrible this year, but as time goes on, it's very clear to me anyway that Kelsey, Caitlin, and Aaliyah cannot coexist at this point in time. I think the one constant is that you can put Aaliyah on any.
Many viewers laughed when she expressed happiness that White had finally picked up a technical foul. Music, however, the more people listened, the more they realized there was another layer beneath the smile. Clark explained that seeing her coach receive a technical energized the team. She talked about how players should want to fight for a coach who fights for them. She discussed the emotional boost that comes when a coach stands up and challenges officials. Those words sounded simple enough, yet they carried an unmistakable undertone. Music. This was not merely praise. This felt like relief. Music. For months, Fever fans have been begging to see visible signs that someone on the sidelines was willing to challenge the treatment Clark receives during games. White's technical foul became symbolic because it represented something supporters had wanted to see all along. Whether intentional or not, Clark's comments sounded like someone acknowledging that a long overdue moment had finally arrived. Basketball history is filled with examples of coaches taking technical fouls to spark their teams. Baseball managers have been doing it for generations, turning arguments with umpires into emotional rallying points. Basketball coaches have mastered the same art. Sometimes a technical foul costs a point or two. Sometimes it buys trust, belief, and energy that are worth far more. Clark seemed to understand exactly music, what that gesture represented. The problem is that one technical foul does not automatically erase months of tension. Music, that is where the larger conversation begins.
The engine that makes this thing go. AB doesn't drop 30 without CC 22. CC drops 30 because she's CC. Everybody needs to get spoon-fed from Caitlin Clark. Yet Stephanie White seems to ignore that obvious fact. Stephanie White in her post-game press conference found some way to squeeze Kelsey Mitchell in there. Kelsey Mitchell, as far as last game goes, deserves.
The Fever continued to operate around a simple reality. Everything starts with Caitlin, music, Clark. That is not criticism of the rest of the roster. It is simply an acknowledgement of how modern basketball works. Elite point guards function as engines. They create opportunities that do not exist before they touch the ball. They manipulate defenses, generate spacing, increase teammates' efficiency, music, and force opponents to spend entire game plans trying to limit their influence. Clark does all of those things. Even when she is not scoring, she is bending defenses in ways that create scoring chances for everyone else. That is why some fans reacted so strongly to White's post-game comments. After the game, much of the praise centered around Aaliyah Boston's outstanding performance. To be clear, Boston deserved recognition. She played exceptionally well and delivered one of her strongest offensive games. Nobody disputes that. However, many viewers noticed what seemed to be missing. Clark had delivered another massive performance, recording a double-double while once again serving as the primary creator for Indiana's offense. Yet, some fans felt the post-game discussion minimized her influence on the victory. Whether fair or unfair, that perception has become a recurring theme. Supporters increasingly believe White goes out of her way to emphasize everyone except Clark. Every interview, every press conference, and every post-game speech becomes a new piece of evidence in an ongoing debate. The more this pattern continues, the more people begin searching for signs that the relationship between coach and superstar is not as healthy as it appears on the surface.
Easy that this one worked out too, because this pass was super risky. You see Cody McMahon, she almost got her hand on it. Luckily she did it. The pass got through. It was a risky pass that paid off in the end, and Caitlin Clark was able to knock down this big three.
But Kelsey Mitchell, we all know, we saw it in 2024. Kelsey Mitchell has the ability to play off the ball. She has to be...
Perhaps the most revealing aspect is not what White says. It is how often fans feel compelled to point it out. When a coach and franchise player are completely aligned, these conversations rarely gain traction. Fans focus on wins and losses. They talk about opponents and playoff positioning. They do not spend every week dissecting body language, substitution patterns, and post-game quotes. Indiana fans are doing exactly that. Music. Part of the reason is strategic. Throughout the season, critics have questioned whether White truly wants to build the offense around Clark's strengths. Clark thrives in transition. She thrives when the pace increases. She thrives when defenses are forced to make split-second decisions. Yet there have been numerous stretches where Indiana appears determined to slow things down. Those moments create frustration because they feel like watching a sports car trapped in rush hour traffic. Every time the Fever pushes the pace, the offense often looks dangerous. Every time they retreat into slower possessions, fans wonder why one of basketball's most dynamic playmakers is music, being asked to operate with the handbrake partially engaged. That frustration reached another level, music, during key substitution decisions late in games. One sequence from the matchup immediately became a talking point among fans. Clark exited the game during a critical defensive possession while others remained on the floor. The decision generated intense debate because many observers no longer view Clark as the defensive liability some critics once claimed she was.
While everyone is out celebrating the matching stat lines and talking about how Caitlin and Aaliyah both took the game over, the film told me a much different story. Yes, Caitlin was brilliant, for one. 30-plus points with 10 assists, efficiently, surgical, complete control of the game when the ball was in her hands, of course. And then that takes us to Aaliyah Boston, who put up 30-plus points with a double-double, 12 rebounds, if I remember correctly. And there's a massive difference, is what I'm saying, between how Aaliyah Boston's numbers were created versus how Caitlin Clark's numbers was created.
In fact, music, several advanced metrics and game observations suggest she has become a far more reliable defender than many expected. When the subsequent possession ended poorly for Indiana, the criticism intensified. Were those coaching decisions reasonable? Perhaps. Could there have been strategic logic behind them? Certainly, the issue is that trust has already eroded. When trust exists, music fans give coaches the benefit of the doubt. When trust disappears, every decision becomes suspicious. That is the challenge White now faces. The technical foul may have earned applause, but it does not erase lingering questions about the direction of the team. Adding to the complexity is the simple reality that Clark's arrival changed everything. Few rookies in sports history have transformed an organization as dramatically as she has transformed Indiana. Music. Attendance exploded. Television ratings surged. National attention followed the franchise everywhere. With that spotlight comes pressure. Music. Every coaching decision is analyzed. Every quote becomes a headline. Music. Every substitution turns into a debate. What might have gone unnoticed with another player becomes front-page basketball discourse when Clark is involved. That environment can strain even healthy relationships. If there truly is tension between Clark and White, it likely stems from competing philosophies rather music than personal animosity. Coaches often want structure. Superstar playmakers often thrive through freedom. Finding the balance between those approaches is one of the hardest tasks in professional sports.
And we think, in my opinion, women's basketball players just aren't used to it. But they're making more money now. And anywhere Caitlin Clark plays, there's going to be a microscope on them. There's going to be a zeroing in by social media, the fans. Every little thing that's said is going to get dissected. It's just the way it is. And I will say this, I give Sophie credit for one thing. She's basically like, you're going to have to get some thick skin.
The concern among fans is that the balance has never been found. Instead, they see a coach attempting music to fit a generational talent into a system rather than building a system around the generational talent. Whether that perception is accurate is almost beside the point. Perception eventually becomes reality in professional sports. Once enough people believe a disconnect exists, every interaction gets viewed, music, through that lens. That is why Clark's comments after the game resonated so strongly. They felt like a small glimpse behind the curtain. They sounded like a player who appreciated seeing her coach publicly challenge officials for once. They sounded like someone acknowledging something supporters had been discussing for months. Most importantly, they sounded genuine. The irony is that Indiana won the game. Normally, victories, music, silence criticism. This one amplified it. Fans were not talking about the final score nearly as much as they were discussing the relationship between coach and star player. That alone reveals how significant the underlying tension has become. Winning can cover many problems, but it cannot permanently hide philosophical differences. Music. As the Fever continue their season, the spotlight will remain fixed on this dynamic. Every technical foul, every timeout, every substitution, and every post-game interview will be examined for clues. The reason is simple. People are trying to determine whether Indiana has a temporary communication problem or a fundamental organizational problem. One can be fixed, music, with conversations. The other requires much bigger changes. For now, White's technical foul served as an unexpected turning point. It was a rare moment where the coach and fan base appeared aligned.